Greg Andrick here with another Business Freedom Conversation post. So you want to improve your recruiting? You want to be a hero to millenniums? So I have an idea for you. I was actually kind of surprised when I saw what the average student loan debt was. So what I'm proposing for you, while Congress, the Supreme Court, and the President wrangle as to what to do about student loans, with the left not wanting to touch the source of the problem, universities and secondary education places that overpromise, underdeliver, and significantly overcharge. But think about what the effect would be on millennials if you offered the benefit of paying their student debt. The average student debt runs $210 to $314 a month. If you compare that to what you're paying people, this is not a really expensive benefit. And think of the positive impact that you would have. Remember, 17% of employees are actively disengaged. They're mad at you and want to hurt you. 50% are quiet quitting, and 33% are actually doing all the work that you need done. So if you offer to pay student loans with some kind of cap, like say a $350 a month cap, look at the goodwill and the attitude improvement that you would get, that you recognize something they consider as an extreme burden and really don't want to pay. And it probably would help you significantly with your recruiting. Anyhow, it's just a proposal and an idea that I had. Remember that it's about 22% of people, all households out there, have student loans, but millennials probably have a significantly higher percentage than the general population, and they're the ones that think things should be given to them for free. So offer this as a benefit. Put it in your recruiting. See what happens. Get people into that actively working segment. So I have a short video, it's about 3 minutes long after this, that kind of explains the heart of the matter currently. If you haven't heard about it all in the news, but I thought I had some interesting facts in there that would help you consider this type of situation and be a real connection to your millennial prospects and recruits. This is Greg Andrick, Business Freedom Conversation Post. I'll catch you on the next one.
The Supreme Court struck down President Biden's student loan forgiveness program, which was set to wipe out nearly $430 billion in debt. The 6-3 decision signals to millions of borrowers that they must begin paying back their debt after a 3-year pause as a result of the pandemic.
For borrowers around the country who had been making financial decisions based on the hope that they would see this forgiveness, it could have major implications to their pocketbooks.
Biden's student loan forgiveness plan, which was announced last August, sought to permanently forgive up to $20,000 in federal student debt for millions of Americans.
95% of the borrowers can benefit from these actions. That's 43 million people.
More than 26 million people applied for the program or were automatically eligible. And of those 26 million, more than 16 million were approved for loan cancellation by the Education Department. The plan would cost the federal government more than $400 billion.
The question is really whether the president has the authority himself to wipe away potentially hundreds of billions of dollars in student loan debt, or whether Congress needed to give explicit authority to the president to do that.
Chief Justice John Roberts said in the opinion that while the Education Secretary, a member of President Biden's cabinet, has the authority to waive or modify existing statutory or regulatory provisions applicable to financial assistance programs under the Education Act, he is not allowed to rewrite that statute from the ground up. Writing in dissent for the court's 3 liberals, Justice Elena Kagan accused the majority of exceeding the court's proper limited role in our nation's governance. Before Biden's forgiveness proposal, borrowers were already receiving debt relief after President Trump announced a suspension on payments due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Nearly 3 years later, those who were hoping to see at least some of their loans forgiven will have to restart their payments.
Not only are they going to have to resume payments for the first time in 3 years, but they're also going to have to potentially pay on a larger balance than they might have expected before.
Once resumed, the typical student loan payment would be between $210 and $314 a month, according to a Wells Fargo report. And those payments come at a time when borrowers are facing higher prices and inflation.
People have gotten used to not having to make these payments, and they've used that money for other things. That money is now going to need to be put towards something different. And so that could really change the way that households dole out their payments every month.
The share of households with student loan debt has more than doubled from 1989 to 2019, with 30% of Black households, 20% of white households, and 14% of Hispanic households holding debt in 2019.
If you're paying back student loans through this, they call it income-based repayment, my plan is to cut your payments in half.
On the 2020 campaign trail, Biden promised that he would erase or significantly reduce student loan debt. And he campaigned on his executive action again before last year's midterm elections.
We're following through on a promise I gave to millions of Americans with student loans, just a little more breathing room.
So as we enter the 2024 election season, it will be notable to see who voters blame for this outcome. Do they blame Republicans and conservative majority Supreme Court for striking it down? Or do they blame President Biden for maybe getting out ahead of his skis and putting forward a proposal that would eventually be struck down in the court?
Publicly, the Biden administration projected confidence about the legality of their student loan forgiveness plan.
We are confident in our legal authority to carry out this program, and we won't let these baseless lawsuits stop us either.
But in private, they've been preparing for this very outcome. They've considered a bunch of different potential policies in response. The main one would allow borrowers with lower incomes to pay a smaller amount on the balance of their loans over time, and then eventually have the rest of their payment either reduced or forgiven. And separately, they've discussed also putting a temporary ban on penalties for people who aren't able to pay their loans. That would essentially prevent the federal government from recommending that people go into delinquency for not paying their loans. It's essentially like a small reprieve to help people get back into the swing of paying.